Now that Disney's Cruella has finally become available to anyone with a Disney Plus account and with no extra fees, I think it's about time we talk about this movie. Cause, I've got a theory. The movie obviously tells the story of how a young Estella becomes the fabulous villain that we all know and love to hate from 101 Dalmatians.
Anita, darling!
Well, sorta. Kinda. Because the ending of Cruella doesn't line up at all with the beginning of 101 Dalmatians, but that's not really what I wanted to talk about today. No, because in Cruella we're introduced to an even bigger villain than Cruella herself, that being the Baroness. And Emma Thompson is just so great as this absolutely ruthless fashion queen who stops at nothing to be the best. I mean, she actually kills people who get in her way in this movie. And ultimately, the movie really paints her as the reason why Cruella becomes evil. But what if I told you that there is a third villain in this film? Someone who is the actual reason for Cruella's behavior. Well, stick around, because today I want to tell you about the hidden villain in Disney's Cruella. Now, in order to get into this, I am going to have to discuss the ending and some of the big twists in this movie. So if you don't want the movie spoiled, then this is your warning to tab over to Disney Plus, watch Cruella, and then come back for the rest of the video. Alright, everyone's caught up? Let's get into it. Throughout the movie, we're led to believe that Cruella's mom is Catherine the maid, whom we see the Baroness kill in the beginning of the film. At the end of the movie, however, it is revealed that the person we thought to be Cruella's mom was in fact not her biological mother. Her real biological mother was her nemesis and the person she'd been fighting against the entire time, the Baroness. And when Cruella learns this, she suddenly realizes why she's always had this tendency to be so cruel. It's because she's inherited the trait from her birth mother. And at first, Cruella doesn't want to accept this, but as she thinks about it, it starts to make a lot of sense to her. Catherine tried to love her into shape, but ultimately Cruella was born to be brilliant, born to be bad, and a little bit mad. Estella never really had a choice. She was always going to end up being Cruella. The movie wants us to believe that the entire reason why Cruella did all of the things she did was because she was destined to it. Both her impeccable fashion sense and her villainy were inherited traits from the Baroness. In short, Cruella was born cruel. But the thing is, I don't buy that. The question of whether children are born good or bad is an age-old one. Seriously, this discussion dates all the way back to ancient Greece, with philosophers like Aristotle chiming in on the subject. And Aristotle was of the mind that people aren't born good or bad. People are born as amoral beings, and our behavior is learned through our lives and our interactions with others. And I would probably tend to agree with that idea. But it's a topic that's been heavily debated, so let's take a look at this debate. Two of the most famous people in this debate were the English philosopher Thomas Hobbes and the Swiss philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Now, Hobbes believed that people are naturally brutish and nasty, that we are instinctually bad. He believed that people need to be reined in by society and that we need to be taught morals. Rousseau, on the other hand, openly critiqued this way of thinking. He believed that people are actually born good. His opinion was that people will naturally gravitate towards being nice to each other if we don't get corrupted by inequality and greed. So both of them actually believe that we're influenced by society, but Hobbes believed that society is what's necessary for us to become good, while Rousseau believed that society is what can turn us against each other. But who was actually right in this debate? Well, there have been several studies on this topic, and there is actually an answer to this question. In a study, babies that were less than a year old were subjected to a form of puppet show, where differently colored shapes would either help each other out or be mean to each other. So, like maybe they'd see an evil blue square pushing its friend down, or they'd see a good yellow triangle trying to help its friend back up. After seeing the puppet show, the kids got to choose which shape they wanted to play with, and they would almost always choose the good yellow triangle. This was obviously a very quick and crude summary of this study, but if you want to read more about it, I've left a link to an article about it in the description that goes into a bit more detail about this. But what does this study tell us about Cruella? Well, it tells us that kids aren't born evil. Jean-Jacques Rousseau definitely had the more correct idea that cruelty is something that you're taught as you grow up and not an inherited trait. So the fact that Cruella is evil is not because her biological mother was evil. There has to be some other reason. And this is where we're going to unmask the real villain of this film. The real reason why Estella became Cruella. Catherine. Yes, that's right. That sweet woman who took in Estella and raised her as her own child when the Baroness wanted to kill her. But I get it, you want some sort of proof for this accusation, so let's take a look at the evidence. Now, obviously it's very kind of Catherine to take in the child when the Baroness orders John the valet to get rid of her. But Catherine knows who the mother of the child is, and I believe that's influenced the way she looks at Estella. While we now know that children aren't born bad, Catherine obviously believes that they can be, and she's scared that Estella has inherited the evil gene from her biological mother. So whenever people around her see any flaws in Estella, she attributes that to the Baroness. Catherine is terrified that Estella is going to turn out like the Baroness, but rather than try to correct any mistakes or cruelties that Estella might exhibit, she chooses to ignore them. Only once in the entire movie do we see Catherine try to tell off Estella for doing something bad, and even then she doesn't really assert herself and she still lets her get away with it. Catherine knows that Estella is making a lot of trouble, but rather than try to teach her some good manners and to be kind, she turns a blind eye to it. She thinks that by simply accepting Estella for who she is and loving her unconditionally, somehow that kindness will rub off on her. But what happens instead is that Catherine gives Estella the same love and treatment no matter how she acts. So she never really learns that her actions have consequences. Even when she gets kicked out of school, Estella ultimately only gets what she wants, which is that she wants to move to London. All through her life, Estella is taught that crime and bad behavior ultimately pays off. And that all starts with her childhood and with Catherine. So that's it. That's why I believe that the true villain and the real reason why Estella becomes Cruella is Catherine. I mean, Catherine is even the one who invents the name Cruella.
That's cool. Her name's Estella, not Cruella.
But what do you think? Do you think I'm completely off my rocker, or do you think there might be something to it? And if you've seen the film, what did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, remember to hit that like button if you like this video, and if you want more videos like this one, then subscribe to the channel. But with that said, my name's Martin, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care and so long.